Well, April is Autism Awareness Month. Recent statistics from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention suggest that 1 in 88 children in the United States could be diagnosed with autism.
Joining us now to talk about how to identify autism in your child and what parents can do to help children with autism is Jose Ovalle. He's a parent outreach liaison with the Autism Program of Illinois. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for inviting us.
Many years ago, I'm sure parents said, oh, my kid must be difficult or he's aggressive. How do you make that distinction between a child who is seemingly difficult in some way and some kind of disorder?
Well, first of all, I think the parents should be aware of what autism is, and there's a lot of information nowadays. In the past, there was autism was not a spectrum; it was just a typical classical difficult way of being. Nowadays, there's a lot of information on the internet and everywhere else, and the best thing will be to take your kid to be checked. Okay. The doctor could then refer you to a specialist who will do an evaluation.
But most immediately, are there some telltale signs of behavior that make it different?
Well, it is recommended that if your child lacks eye contact, if he doesn't develop certain milestones, if he loses language or develops some language but loses it, or if it altogether stops talking, then you have to. It is recommended that you go to a specialist.
You had twin boys, both diagnosed with autism. Back then, they didn't realize, like you talked about, that spectrum, that there was varying degrees of autism. Can you talk about that and address that?
Yeah, my children have, well, they're 21 years old now. They have high-functioning autism. But when they were young, all the fantastic programs that there are now and services that exist now didn't exist back then. And we didn't know it was a spectrum, so, but they had the typical behaviors, the no eye contact, they lost speech, and there were some behaviors that were difficult.
Some ways to help kids. The first one is organize the environment, and I want to ask you the question based on that tip. Do you put them in a school for kids with autism, or do you put them in the mix?
Well, you have to put them in the mix. That's the most recommended idea. Unless the child has a severe form of autism, then he's going to be put into a structured teaching method that's tailored for him, or her. But the most ideal thing for children who are on the moderate or the high-functioning spectrum is to have them in an inclusive program where they interact with other children and then pulled out for special services.
Okay. You have listed to avoid sarcasm. Why is that important for children who are autistic?
I'm going to give a good example. I remember once telling my twins, and you better pick up your room, and they stared at me. Well, they were thinking about picking it up, physically picking it up. So they told him, Dad, we can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? Well, it'll be very heavy. Until I caught on that they were literally thinking they had to do it. So they take everything literal. Yeah.
Interesting.
We say emphasize social learning.
Well, social learning is one of the biggest issues because children on the spectrum will, there's two types of them. There are those who want to be around people, but they really don't know how to socially interact. This conversation we're having back and forth is very hard for them. And there are others who want to be alone all the time and avoid any kind of social interaction. So there are social skills groups where they're taught how to interact with other people.
You talked about teaching them to communicate their needs. How do you do that with a child who's so young anyway, and with a lot of these parents that are dealing with these early diagnoses?
I would recommend the parent to create a profile of their child and write down, and the parents will not always remember what happened or what calmed them down or how they were able to communicate more effectively. So write down the way your child understands, and if you create that kind of a log and bring it to school or to whoever's taking care of them, they will be able to have a consistent way of communicating with them. With younger kids or with children who are moderate or severely affected by autism, it is recommended to use pictures or photographs or a consistent organization form.
All right. Jose Ovalle, we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, for more information, you can check out the Autism Program of Illinois. There's our website right there on your screen, theautismprogram.org.